Wisdom Heart. We're going to explore today the concept, the experience, the realization of what it means to live your Dharma, to live the Dharma, and to live your Dharma. Because the mystical path, the awakening path, is not a conceptual journey. It is an embodied journey. It is a transformational journey of discovering, of realizing, of embodying, and of expressing the Dharma in, through, and as your life. This is what the mystics and the sages of all traditions have pointed to. And they have all pointed as well to an understanding that there are 4 levels of living the Dharma, 4 levels of realizing the Dharma. 3 primary and 1 secret level, which we'll discuss now. The primary, the first level of living the Dharma is when we have our initial awakening, our realization, our communion, when we wake up. Whether that awakening is traumatic or subtle, it is a reorienting moment in life when we recognize that who we are, who you are, what life is not what you were conditioned to believe. That the self that you were conditioned to believe yourself to be was in fact not the true self, not the deep true self. That the life that you've been conditioned to lead was in fact not the true life. Again, using the language of the East, not the dharmic life. It was the life of karma, of action and reaction, of conditioning, of following the dictates of culture in order to achieve success, fullness, acceptance, identity, worth, in terms that are defined by that culture, whatever it may have been for you. But we have this primary moment of reorientation. In the Japanese, it's called a satori. An aha, an awakening, a glimpse of innate well-being, a glimpse of undisturbed wholeness, a feeling of unconditional peace, of happiness without a cause. In the Wisdom Heart program called What's Calling You, we describe these primary glimpses as sacred moments. When the conditions are right in our life, the clouds of conditioning disperse and the sunlight pours in, revealing a new vision of self, a new vision of life, revealing the ever-present spirit that was there all along. This is the recognition that arrives with this primary living of the Dharma, which is that, as it says in the Bible, Moses, before the burning bush, says, "This is a holy ground. This is a holy place." And when we have that primary awakening, wherever we are, we recognize this is a holy place. This is a holy moment, a sacred moment. That we are not separate from that spirit. That ever-present spirit infuses, permeates, and is woven into every level of existence, including this moment. And this is the primary awakening of the Dharma. And for most of us, it is a relatively unstable, which is to say that we lose the plot. It's there in our memory track, but in our experiential reality, it often fades. And this fading away brings us to the second level of living our Dharma, of realizing our Dharma. For while the first level is what we could call spirit-centered, it's that pure and unmediated communion, whether for a millisecond of time or longer, where we see and feel and know. And then it fades, and we realize there's another level of dharmic living we need to engage in, which we might call soul-centered. Remember that the soul in mystical tradition, the soul is the memory track of your being. Your essential nature is spirit, unconditioned, beyond time, never born, never dying, and yet paradoxically moving through domains of time and space. And that movement, that creative movement, generates memory tracks. The memory tracks are the soul of your being, which exists at several different levels. One we are all familiar with is our personal memory track. That's the memory track of your personal history, the history you consciously remember and identify with and say, that's me, and that happened to me when I was a kid. That's your personal history, what the neurologists or neuroscientists call your explicit memory. And there are elements of that personal history, of course, that are woven in with the cultural history that are a part of your conscious memory, your journey in this life. Whether you were at Woodstock or whether you were not at Woodstock, whether you, where were you? And I know in my generation, where were you when Kennedy was shot? That's like a collective moment, but each of us, it's seared into our individual personal memory tracks explicitly. And then there's another layer of memory that deals with the invisible dimension of our cultural and collective history. Those ideas and prejudices, loyalties and assumptions that we were swimming in, but were never spoken explicitly. This is part of what the neuroscientists call our implicit memory. Memories that were encoded non-verbally, that were part of our environment and that we absorbed, as well as memory tracks that were encoded before we had cognition, before we had rational thought, before we had language in the earliest moments of this incarnation. Even in the prenatal moments of this incarnation, memory tracks were being laid down about the nature of life and the nature of our relationship with life and with the universe. These are called implicit. They're memories that have no conscious imagery associated with them, but they are deeply encoded in our neurology. They're woven, the ancient mystics would say, they would call them our cellular memory. They're in the body itself, the body-mind. They're woven into the DNA. It's the memory tracks of our ancestors, of your bloodline that you carry with you. Their victories and their failures, their struggles and their achievements, the beliefs and the emotionality, the ways of relating to life that were coded in after generation. We carry those in the body-mind, and they are part of that. They are another layer of our memory track. We also, of course, carry an entire evolutionary history from the amoeba level, the reptilian level, from the mammalian level. All of these are part of, woven into this human instrument. These are all memory tracks that we are carrying and that influence the ways that we encounter our life experience. And for those who go deeper, of course, there are these super subtle memory tracks encoded in the astral body and the chakras of your being that relate to previous existences, however you might want to interpret that. All of these layers of the memory track include what we might call memory tracks of communion, memory tracks of resources, of richness, of beauty. And they also include memory tracks of struggle, of incompleteness, of woundedness. And at this secondary level of living our Dharma, this soul-centered level of living our Dharma, the practice is to turn the light of loving awareness onto those wounds. Whether those are coded as personal memories of our childhood or even of last week with our boss, or whether we recognize that we're carrying an ancestral karmic incompleteness, and it's time to bless and to liberate those ancestors, to free them and to infuse them with loving awareness and with the energy and with the gift that they need in order to be free. This is the secondary level. It's the level of healing of the memory tracks. And in liberating and balancing these memory tracks, releasing energy and intelligence that has been bound up in repetitive patterns of incompleteness and suffering. That's the second level of living Dharma. And as we deepen our soul attunement, what we recognize that while there may be all of these memory tracks flowing within us, they are all resonant with each other. And in this life, there are core themes, core soul questions, primary wounds, as it were, that we have come into this specific lifetime to heal, to balance, and to liberate. And this brings us to the tertiary level, where we recognize that this moment, this event, this history, this situation I'm in right now, the one you're in right now, with your family, with your work, with your community, with your nation, the situation that you find yourself in right now, and the karmic way that you are relating to it, in other words, the unconscious and conditioned way that you were relating to it, reveals the pattern that you are here to balance and to heal. That this life is a sacred opportunity to liberate and to transform core soul wounds that have resonance or ripple effect through the multiple layers of your consciousness. For symbolically, if you're here to heal the wound of abandonment, by touching that place of woundedness within, where it's in your own body-mind now, and bringing blessing to it, healing to it, light to it, you free all of those layers of memory track, all those associated memory tracks that are linked to that karma of abandonment. You free up tremendous energy, creativity, that then flows into your body-mind and allows you to recognize the fourth and the secret level, which is that the radiance of the spirit, the memory tracks of the soul, and the encounter of this moment are all braided together in a sacred rope. In the ancient Indian tradition, it was called the sacred thread. The sacred thread was composed of 3 threads that were woven together and knotted together. Where? In this moment. This moment is the doorway that opens you up. This challenge with this person is a reflection of a deep soul calling that will allow you to then open even deeper and to recognize that it is all in service of the awakening of the spirit within you and around you. Live your Dharma. remember who you are. Heal the memory tracks and carry that blessing into the situations of your present day experience.